Robert Donaldson stared at the report on his desk, the numbers staring back like an accusation. 15 years he'd spent building retail giant from a regional chain into a nationwide success with over 300 stores. Yet something was going wrong, and he couldn't figure out what from his corner office on the 32nd floor. "These numbers can't be right," he muttered, running his hand through his salt and pepper hair. Employee turnover had jumped by nearly 30% in the last quarter alone. Customer complaints were up. Sales were down. Something was happening on the front lines of his company, and all the executive meetings and PowerPoint presentations in the world weren't telling him why. His phone buzzed. "Sir, the board meeting starts in 5 minutes," his assistant's voice reminded him. "On my way," Robert replied, gathering his notes. He paused at the window, looking out at the city below. All those tiny dots of people, including his own employees. When was the last time he'd actually spoken with a stockroom worker, a cashier, anyone who dealt with customers face to face? The board meeting went exactly as he expected. Lots of talk about restructuring, rebranding, and other corporate solutions. That felt hollow. After 2 hours of discussions that went nowhere, Robert cleared his throat. "I have an idea," he said, interrupting a presentation about social media strategy. "But it's unconventional." The room fell silent. The chief marketing officer, Patricia, raised an eyebrow. "Unconventional how?" "I want to go undercover in our own stores," Robert said. The words hung in the air as his executive team exchanged glances. "Like that TV show?" asked Tom, the chief financial officer, with a slight smirk. "Exactly like that show," Robert nodded, ignoring the condescension in Tom's voice. "Something's wrong with our company culture, and we're not going to find it in these reports." Patricia set down her pen. "Robert, with all due respect, you can't just walk into our stores. Everyone knows what you look like. Your face is on the company website, the annual reports." "I know. That's why I'll need help changing my appearance," Robert said. "And I'll need all of you to cover for me. Official story is I'm taking a 3-week sabbatical to visit potential new markets." The room erupted in objections, security concerns, PR risks, questions about who would run the company. Robert let them talk themselves out before he spoke again. "I've made up my mind," he said quietly, but with enough authority that the room fell silent again. "I built this company on understanding our customers and our workers. Somewhere along the way, I lost touch with both. It's time to reconnect." 3 days later, Robert hardly recognized himself in the mirror. His neatly trimmed beard was now full and slightly messy. Hair dye had covered the distinguished gray with an ordinary brown. Thick-framed glasses changed the shape of his face, and clothing from a discount store completed the transformation. Gone was the CEO in tailored suits. In his place stood Ray Davis, a middle-aged man looking to restart his career after being laid off from his office job. His wife had laughed when she saw him. "I married a CEO and now I'm looking at a stockroom worker," she teased, straightening his collar. "But I like the beard. Maybe keep it when you're done?" Now, sitting in a modest hotel room in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Robert felt a mix of excitement and nervousness that he hadn't experienced since opening his first store decades ago. Store number 127 had shown the worst decline in employee satisfaction scores in the entire company. His HR director had described it as a trouble spot with a revolving door of workers. Tomorrow, he would find out why. Ray now, checked his backstory one more time. Ray Davis, 52 years old. Previously an office manager at a small company that went under during recent economic troubles, looking for honest work to support himself while he figures out his next career move. Simple, believable, and close enough to his real age that he could keep the details straight. He set his alarm for 5:30 a.m. His shift started at 7, and he didn't want to be late on his first day. As he prepared for bed, he noticed his hands, soft with manicured nails that had never done manual labor. By this time tomorrow, they wouldn't look like a CEO's hands anymore. Sleep didn't come easily. He tossed and turned, wondering if this whole plan was foolish. What would he actually learn? Would someone recognize him despite the disguise? What if he couldn't handle the physical demands of stockroom work at his age? Around midnight, his phone lit up with a text from Patricia. "Not too late to back out. We can hire professionals to investigate." Robert typed back, "Sometimes you need to see things with your own eyes." As he finally drifted off to sleep, he thought about the thousands of people who worked for him, people whose faces he didn't know, whose stories he'd never heard. For years, he'd told himself that was just the reality of running a large corporation. You couldn't know everyone. You had to trust the system, but the system was broken somewhere. Numbers didn't lie. Tomorrow, Ray Davis would clock in for his first day of work at retail giant store number 127. He'd unload trucks, stock shelves, and do whatever other tasks they assigned him. He'd eat lunch with his coworkers, make small talk, listen to their complaints and jokes. And maybe, just maybe, he'd start to understand what had gone wrong with the company he'd built. What he didn't expect was just how deep the problems went, or that his journey would uncover something far more troubling than inefficiency or poor training. He had no idea that by the end of his 3 weeks undercover, he would completely transform not just store number 127, but the entire culture of retail giant itself. But that all lay ahead. For now, in a hotel room far from his usual luxury, the CEO turned stockroom helper finally fell asleep, dreaming of cardboard boxes and price tags and name badges that read Ray. Ray's alarm blared at 5:30 a.m., jolting him from a fitful sleep. For a moment he forgot where he was, not in his California king bed with Egyptian cotton sheets, but in a budget hotel with a mattress that had seen better days. Reality quickly rushed back. Today was his first day as an undercover stockroom helper at his own company. After a quick shower and a breakfast of vending machine coffee and a granola bar, Ray headed to store number 127. The early morning air was crisp, the sun just beginning to rise as he pulled into the employee parking section. Far from the front of the store, he noted. His usual reserved parking space with CEO painted on the sign seemed like it belonged to another lifetime. He tugged nervously at his retail giant, fest as he approached the employee entrance at the back of the building. A small group of workers huddled near the door, finishing cigarettes and sharing jokes before their shifts began. They fell silent as Ray approached, eyeing him with curiosity. "You the new guy?" asked an older man with a gray stubble and tired eyes. "Yeah." "First day," Ray replied, trying to sound more nervous than he actually felt. "It wasn't hard." "Good luck," said a young woman with purple-streaked hair. "You'll need it," the others chuckled, exchanging knowing glances that made Ray's stomach tighten. What exactly had he gotten himself into? Inside, Ray was directed to the stockroom supervisor, Gina, a sturdy woman with short-cropped hair and forearms that spoke of years of physical labor. Her handshake was firm, her smile professional but guarded. "Ever worked retail before?" she asked, leading Ray through a maze of inventory. "No. Office work mostly," Ray answered truthfully. Gina nodded. "You'll learn quick or you'll quit quick. That's how it goes around here." She handed him a box cutter. "You'll be working with Alex today. He'll show you the ropes." Alex turned out to be a college student, working part-time to pay for textbooks and living expenses. He couldn't have been more than 20, with an easy smile that disappeared whenever certain managers walked by. "First thing we do is unload the truck," Alex explained, gesturing to the loading dock where a semi had just backed in. "Hope your back is strong." The next 2 hours were a blur of cardboard boxes, heavy lifting, and sweat. Ray's muscles, toned from his personal trainer sessions at his exclusive gym, proved inadequate for the relentless pace of unloading. Box after box, cart after cart. By 9 a.m., his hands were raw, his lower back screaming in protest. "You're doing okay for a new guy," Alex commented during a brief water break. "Most quit before lunch on their first day." "People quit that often?" Ray asked, trying to keep his CEO brain from showing through his Ray disguise. Alex shrugged. "Turnover's crazy here. I've been here 8 months. That makes me practically senior staff." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. After unloading came sorting, then stocking. Ray followed Alex around the store, learning how to arrange products, check inventory tags, and operate the hand scanner. The work itself wasn't complicated, but the pace was relentless. Any time they slowed down, a floor manager would appear as if by magic, asking why they weren't moving faster. When lunchtime finally arrived, Ray's body ached in places he didn't know could ache. He followed Alex to the break room, a small, windowless space with vending machines, microwave, and tables that had seen better days. About a dozen employees sat in small groups, conversations flowing until a woman in a sharp blazer entered the room. The change was immediate and unmistakable. Conversations died. Heads dipped toward food. The atmosphere went from relaxed to tense in seconds. "That's Lisa Harmon," Alex whispered. "Store manager. Watch yourself around her." Lisa surveyed the room with sharp eyes, nodded curtly, then left. As quickly as she'd entered, like magic, the tension dissipated the moment she was gone. "What's her deal?" Ray asked, unwrapping the sandwich he'd bought that morning. Alex glanced around before answering. "Let's just say she runs a tight ship and leave it at that." But Ray noticed something in Alex's expression. Fear. Not respect, not professional caution, but genuine fear. In all his years running Retail Giant, that was never the emotion he wanted his employees to feel toward management. Back on the floor, Ray tried asking casual questions about workplace satisfaction. How did Alex like working here? Were there any changes he'd make if he could? Each time Alex deflected. "It's just a job," he repeated, changing the subject. Similar patterns emerged with other employees Ray met throughout the day. They were friendly enough with each other, sharing jokes and stories, but the moment work policies or management came up, they clammed up or gave non-committal answers. By the end of his shift, Ray's body was exhausted, but his mind was racing. Something was off here. The efficiency was there. The store looked immaculate. Inventory moved quickly, employees stayed busy, but there was no joy, no sense of pride or ownership. On his third day, Ray began noticing more concerning patterns. When a customer complained about a pricing error, the employee helping them looked terrified, checking over their shoulder to see if management had noticed. When a truck delivery ran late, the receiving team scrambled as if their jobs depended on something they couldn't control. The breaking point came during Ray's fourth day. He was organizing clearance items when he overheard two employees talking in the next aisle, unaware of his presence. "Did you hear about Greg?" He suggested an easier way to track online pickups during yesterday's team meeting. "Oh no, did Lisa flip out?" "Worse." She smiled and thanked him for his input, then pulled him into her office afterward. "He's on final warning now for challenging established protocols." Classic Lisa move. Speak up, get shut down. That's why I keep my head down and my mouth shut. 3 more months and I'll have enough saved for that coding boot camp. Then I'm out of here for good. Ray's blood ran cold. As CEO, he'd always prided himself on running a company that valued employee input. Retail Giant's official policy encouraged suggestions from all levels. There was even an annual award for the best employee-generated improvement idea. Yet here, in store number 127, suggesting improvements got you punished. Speaking up put a target on your back. That night, back in his hotel room, Ray made detailed notes about everything he'd observed. The physical demands of the job were tough but manageable. The real problem was deeper, a culture of fear where employees were afraid to voice concerns or suggest improvements. As he set his alarm for another early morning, Ray realized his undercover mission had just become much more important than he'd initially thought. This wasn't just about understanding why satisfaction scores were down. Something was fundamentally broken in the management structure he'd built, and Lisa Harmon, the store manager with the icy smile and fear-inducing presence, seemed to be at the center of it all. Ray entered his second week at store the 127 with a clear mission: gather evidence about Lisa's management style and the fear-based culture that had taken root. His muscles had grown accustomed to the physical demands of stockroom work. His hands, once soft and manicured, now sported calluses that he wore like badges of honor. But the real change was in how he approached each day. No longer was he simply observing, he was investigating. "Hey Ray, want to grab lunch together?" Alex asked as they finished unloading the morning delivery. Sure thing, Ray replied, grateful for the opportunity. Alex had become something of an ally, though still guarded when it came to discussing management. In the break room, Ray casually steered the conversation toward the company's suggestion program. I had this idea about how we could reorganize the stockroom to save time, he mentioned, keeping his voice casual. Worth bringing up at the next staff meeting? Alex nearly choked on his sandwich. Seriously, don't. Why not? Isn't there some kind of employee suggestion program? I thought I saw a poster about it near the time clock. Look, that program exists. On paper, Alex whispered, leaning forward. But around here, it's career suicide. Ray feigned confusion. I don't understand. Alex glanced around to ensure no one was listening. 2 months ago, a guy named Greg suggested a better system for handling online orders. Made perfect sense, would have saved hours of work each week. Know what happened? Lisa thanked him in the meeting, then wrote him up the next day for not embracing established company procedures. He was gone within 3 weeks. Schedule cut to nothing until he had to quit. That's not right, Ray said, genuinely disturbed despite already knowing parts of this story. That's Lisa, Alex shrugged. She reports amazing numbers to corporate by keeping everyone in line. No deviations, no suggestions, no problems. He tapped his temple. Smart in a twisted way. Corporate sees great metrics, she gets bonuses, we all stay quiet or get pushed out. This conversation confirmed what Ray had suspected, but hearing it, laid out so plainly, sent a chill through him. As CEO, he'd created evaluation systems meant to reward innovation and employee engagement. Instead, they'd become weapons in the hands of managers like Lisa. Over the next few days, Ray strategically volunteered for shifts and tasks that would let him observe more of the store's operations. He picked up an extra evening shift in electronics, helped in the clothing department during a sale, and signed up for early morning inventory counts, all opportunities to talk with different employees. The stories accumulated quickly. Lisa's reputation extended throughout the store. A cashier had been moved to the least desirable shift rotation after questioning an outdated return policy. A department supervisor had been passed over for promotion after suggesting a more efficient training program. Each example followed the same pattern. Speak up, get punished. By his 10th day undercover, Ray had earned enough trust from Gina, the stockroom supervisor, for her to open up during a quiet moment taking inventory. Been here long enough to notice how things work, haven't you? She asked, not looking up from her clipboard. Starting to, Ray admitted. Gina sighed. Lisa runs this place like her personal kingdom. 5 store managers in 6 years, and she's the only one who's lasted. Know why? Her numbers look perfect on paper. Inventory shrink is low, labor costs stay under budget, everything runs on time. But at what cost? Ray asked. The human cost, Gina said simply. I've seen good people who loved this company, broken down or pushed out. Lisa's got a whole shadow system going. Reports one thing to corporate, does another thing here. Shadow system? Ray's CEO brain went on high alert. Gina nodded. Come with me. She led him to a small office in the back of the stockroom and closed the door. From a locked cabinet, she pulled out a folder. Employee evaluations, the official ones that go to HR, and she pulled out a second folder, the real ones she keeps here. She tracks who speaks up, who questions things, marks them as adjustment, resistant, or corporate culture challenges. Ray flipped through the folder, stomach churning at what he saw. Detailed notes on employees who had suggested changes, questioned procedures, or even just asked too many questions during meetings. Lisa had created an elaborate system to identify and isolate what she called disruptive elements. Why are you showing me this? Ray asked. Been watching you, Gina said. You notice things, ask questions, care about how things could be better. That's rare these days. She took back the folders and locked them away. Just wanted you to understand what you're up against if you're thinking of trying to change things. The next day, Ray brought up the company's anonymous feedback system during lunch with a group of coworkers. Anonymous? A young woman named Tina laughed bitterly. Nothing's anonymous here. What do you mean? Ray asked. Last year, someone reported safety concerns through that system. Something about blocked emergency exits during holiday storage. Within a week, Lisa somehow knew exactly who it was. Guy's hours got cut in half until he had to find another job. Ray was stunned. The anonymous reporting system had been his personal project 3 years ago, a direct line for employees to reach corporate without fear of retaliation. Hearing it had been compromised shook him to his core. That night in his hotel room, Ray organized his findings. He'd documented conversations, taken photos where legal, and gathered dozens of employee stories, all pointing to a systematic dismantling of the open communication channels he'd tried to build at Retail Giant. His phone buzzed with a text from Patricia, his chief marketing officer. "Bored getting restless. Need update on your project," Ray typed back. "Found the problem. Worse than we thought. Need 1 more week." He stared at the ceiling, unable to sleep. As CEO, he'd believed his policies and values trickled down through the organization unchanged. The reality was far different. Store number 127 wasn't an outlier, it was a warning sign. If Lisa had figured out how to game the system and silence employees here, how many other managers across his 300 stores had done the same? Tomorrow would be his final phase of investigation. He'd seen enough of the problem. Now he needed to witness Lisa's tactics firsthand before he could act. Ray had a plan, but it was risky. He would deliberately speak up at the morning staff meeting, make a suggestion for improvement, and see what happened. As he finally drifted off to sleep, Ray realized how much these 2 weeks had changed him. He no longer saw numbers and metrics when he thought about Retail Giant. He saw Alex's resigned shrug, Gina's weary determination, and the fear that flashed across employees' faces whenever Lisa entered a room. The company he'd built was broken, and fixing it would require more than new policies or programs. It would require a complete reimagining of how power flowed through the organization he'd created. Ray stood at the back of the break room, heart pounding as employees filed in for the morning meeting. His 2 weeks of investigation had painted a clear picture of Lisa's management style, but today he would see it in action. He had a simple plan: make a suggestion for improvement and watch what happened. Lisa strode in precisely at 7:30 a.m., clipboard in hand, her heels clicking authoritatively on the linoleum floor. The room fell silent immediately. "Good morning, team," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Let's keep this brief so we can all get to work. First item, our customer satisfaction scores dipped 2 points last week. Unacceptable. I need everyone pushing those credit card applications and mentioning our online survey." She continued through announcements about upcoming sales, schedule changes, and inventory goals. Ray noticed how she emphasized metrics and numbers, with barely a mention of the employees who would achieve those goals. "Any questions before we wrap up?" Lisa asked, clearly expecting none. Ray raised his hand. Several employees shot him warning glances. "Yes. Ray, is it?" Lisa's smile tightened. "I've been working in the stockroom for 2 weeks now," Ray began, keeping his voice friendly and casual. "I've noticed we spend a lot of time double-handling merchandise when trucks arrive. What if we reorganized the receiving area to sort items by department immediately? Might save us an hour or 2 each delivery." A heavy silence fell over the room. Employees stared at the floor, walls, ceiling, anywhere but at Ray or Lisa. Gina, standing near the door, closed her eyes briefly, as if witnessing a car crash in slow motion. Lisa's smile never wavered. "Thank you for that suggestion, Ray. We always appreciate fresh eyes. I'll take that under consideration. Now, if there's nothing else..." Meeting adjourned, employees scattered quickly. Alex caught up with Ray in the hallway, whispering urgently, "What were you thinking? You just painted a target on your back." "I wanted to see what would happen," Ray replied honestly.
"Well, now you'll find out," Alex said grimly. "Good luck, man." The morning passed without incident. Ray worked alongside Gina in the stockroom, processing new arrivals. Around noon, Lisa's voice came over the intercom. "Ray Davis to the managers."
"Office, please." Gina gave him a sympathetic look. "Remember, whatever happens in there, it's not about you. It's about her control." Ray nodded, removed his work gloves, and headed to Lisa's office. He knocked on the door, suddenly aware that, for the first time in 2 weeks, he might have to break character. If Lisa was about to retaliate against him for a simple suggestion, he couldn't let it stand. "Come in," Lisa called. Her office was immaculate, every paper aligned, every pen in its place. Awards and certificates covered one wall, all recognizing her for outstanding performance metrics. Ray noted there were no team photos, no evidence of the human side of management. "Have a seat," she said, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. As Ray sat down, she opened a folder. "I wanted to discuss your performance so far." "Is there a problem?" Ray asked. "Not yet," Lisa said with a thin smile. "But I noticed some concerning patterns. Your file shows you've been asking a lot of questions about company policies and procedures. And today you decided to suggest changing our established receiving protocols." "I thought it might help save time," Ray said innocently. "Here at store number 127, we follow corporate procedures exactly," Lisa said, her voice hardening slightly. "When new hires start suggesting changes before they even understand our systems, it indicates potential adjustment issues." She slid a paper across the desk. "This is a verbal warning for disruptive workplace behavior. Nothing serious, just a note in your file." Ray stared at the paper, genuine anger building inside him. This was exactly what he'd been told about. Immediate retaliation for speaking up disguised as performance management. "I don't understand," he said, playing his role one last time. "I was just trying to help." "And we appreciate that enthusiasm," Lisa said, not sounding appreciative at all. "But help looks like following the systems we have in place. Now, I need you to sign this acknowledgement." Before Ray could respond, a knock came at the door. A young woman named Tina, the same one who had laughed about the anonymous reporting system, peeked in. "Sorry to interrupt, but you wanted to see me after your meeting with Ray?" "Yes, come in," Lisa said. "Ray, we'll finish this in a moment." Tina entered nervously, hands fidgeting with her employee badge. Ray stood to leave, but something in her fearful expression made him pause at the door. "Tina," Lisa began, "I wanted to discuss the suggestion you made yesterday about changing the display layout in housewares. It was just an idea," Tina said quickly. "The current layout is fine, really." "Your probationary review is coming up," Lisa continued as if Tina hadn't spoken. "These attitude issues and difficulties following established procedures are concerning." Ray watched Tina's face fall. The young woman was blinking rapidly, trying not to cry. Something in Ray snapped. He closed the door and turned back to face Lisa. "That's enough," he said, his voice changing from Ray's hesitant tone to Robert's executive authority. Lisa frowned. "Excuse me, this is a private meeting and you were dismissed." "No, Lisa. You're dismissed," Ray said, standing straighter and removing his glasses. "I've seen and heard enough over the past 2 weeks." Confusion flashed across Lisa's face, quickly replaced by indignation. "Who do you think you are?" "I'm Robert Donaldson," he said, running a hand through his hair and standing with the confidence of a CEO rather than a stockroom worker. "I'm not Ray Davis. I've been working undercover to understand why this store's employee satisfaction and retention metrics have plummeted." Lisa's mouth fell open. Tina gasped, looking between them in confusion. That's impossible," Lisa stammered, her composure cracking. "You can't be—" Robert reached into his pocket and pulled out his CEO identification badge. "I am. And what I've witnessed in the past 2 weeks is disturbing. You've created a culture of fear where employees are afraid to speak up, suggest improvements, or question procedures." "Sir?" Lisa regained some composure. "You don't understand the pressures of running a store. Corporate demands results." "I am corporate," Robert interrupted, "and I never authorized creating a climate of fear to achieve those results. I built this company on the idea that the best insights come from employees on the front lines." He turned to Tina, whose eyes were wide with shock. "Tina, would you please excuse us? And please don't mention this to anyone just yet. I'll explain everything to the staff soon." After Tina left, clearly still processing what she'd witnessed, Robert turned back to Lisa. "I've documented everything," he said quietly. The retaliatory write-ups, the shadow evaluation system you keep locked in your office, the way you've undermined our anonymous reporting tool, the fear you've instilled in good employees who care about this company. Lisa's face had gone pale. Sir, I can explain. You're suspended effective immediately, Robert said. A human resources team will arrive tomorrow to begin a formal investigation. Please gather your personal belongings and leave your keys and badge with security. You can't do this, Lisa whispered. But the fight had gone out of her voice. I can and I am, Robert replied. I built Retail Giant to be a place where people could grow, contribute, and feel valued. What you've created here isn't just wrong, it's against everything this company stands for. As Lisa sat stunned in her chair, Robert walked out of the office, no longer stooped in Ray's posture but standing tall. His cover was blown, but that didn't matter anymore. He had what he needed. Now came the hard part. Fixing what was broken, not just in store number 127, but potentially throughout his entire company. Word spread through store number 27 like wildfire. By closing time, whispers filled every department. The stockroom guy is actually the CEO. Lisa's been suspended. Corporate is coming tomorrow. Some employees were skeptical, others hopeful, all of them stunned. Robert spent the evening in his hotel room, making calls and arranging for a human resources team to arrive first thing in the morning. He hadn't planned to reveal himself so soon, but watching Lisa try to intimidate Tina had forced his hand. Now he had to move quickly. His phone buzzed constantly with messages from his executive team. Patricia, his chief marketing officer, was particularly concerned. Is this going to be a PR disaster? Should we prepare a statement? No statements yet, Robert replied. This isn't about PR, it's about fixing what's broken. He caught his reflection in the mirror. Beard grown out, hair dyed. The costume of Ray Davis still in place. Tomorrow he'd face the employees as himself, but part of him would always be Ray now. He'd experienced the company from the bottom up, felt the weight of boxes on his back and the heavier weight of feeling powerless in a system he himself had created. Sleep came fitfully that night. Morning brought a flurry of activity. A team from corporate headquarters arrived, led by Diane from Human Resources, a no-nonsense woman whom Robert trusted completely. He'd briefed her over the phone, but seeing the evidence in person left her shaking her head. I knew we had isolated management issues, but this is systematic, she said as they reviewed Lisa's shadow files in the office. She documented her own violations like they were achievements. At 9 a.m., with the store closed for a special staff meeting, Robert stood before the assembled employees of store NAR 127. He'd washed out the hair dye and trimmed his beard, but still wore the standard employee uniform, a conscious choice to remind himself and everyone else of his 2 weeks in their shoes. For those who haven't heard yet, my name is Robert Donaldson. I'm the CEO of Retail Giant, he began, watching reactions ripple through the crowd. Some employees who'd been off yesterday gasped. Others nodded, having already heard the news. For the past 2 weeks, I've worked alongside you as Ray Davis, learning what it truly means to be on the front lines of this company. What I discovered was deeply troubling. Robert paced slowly, making eye contact with employees he'd come to know. This store has been operating under a management style based on fear, retaliation, and control. Those who spoke up with ideas were silenced. Those who questioned processes were punished. This is the opposite of everything I intended when I founded this company. Alex, who had warned Ray about suggesting changes, stood with arms crossed, looking both vindicated and uncertain. Lisa Harmon has been suspended pending an investigation, Robert continued. But this isn't just about one manager. This is about a system that allowed her approach to thrive, that rewarded numbers on paper while ignoring the human cost of achieving those numbers. Gina, the stockroom supervisor who had shown Ray the shadow files, nodded slowly. Starting today, things will change, Robert promised. I'm appointing an interim management team led by Diane from our HR department. They'll be here for the next month to rebuild this store's culture from the ground up. He outlined immediate changes. A new, truly anonymous reporting system, protection for employees who offered suggestions, and a review of all disciplinary actions taken under Lisa's management. But most importantly, Robert said, I want to hear from you. Every person in this room has insights that could make this company better. You're the ones doing the work every day. You see the problems and opportunities that I can't see from my office. For the next hour, Robert opened the floor to questions and comments. At first, employees were hesitant, understandably wary after years of being silenced. But gradually, the dam broke. A cashier pointed out flaws in the checkout system. A department lead suggested better training procedures. Tina, who had witnessed Robert's confrontation with Lisa, bravely stood and shared her ideas for display layouts. Robert listened, truly listened, taking notes and asking follow-up questions. With each suggestion acknowledged and respected, the atmosphere in the room visibly shifted from tension to cautious hope. One last thing before we open the store, Robert said as the meeting concluded. I want to announce a new company-wide initiative we're calling Speak Up. Every suggestion will receive a response within 48 hours. Ideas that are implemented will be recognized and rewarded. No employee will ever face retaliation for offering feedback again. He looked around at the faces watching him, people he now knew by name whose struggles he had shared. I built this company on a belief that retail could be different, more human, more collaborative. Somewhere along the way, we lost sight of that. Today, we start finding our way back. The investigation revealed that Lisa's management style wasn't an isolated incident. 7 other store managers across the retail giant network had adopted similar tactics, creating what Robert called pockets of toxic leadership. All were removed from their positions. 6 months later, store number 127 had transformed. Under new management that emphasized collaboration and respect, employee satisfaction scores had risen by nearly 50%. Turnover dropped dramatically, and perhaps most tellingly, customer satisfaction increased as well, proof that happy employees created better shopping experiences. Tina, whose display suggestion had been implemented, now led a visual merchandising team that traveled between stores sharing best practices. Her layouts had increased sales in housewares by 22%. Alex had been promoted to assistant department manager, where he made a point of mentoring new employees and encouraging their input. Gina remained in the stockroom, but now headed up a company-wide efficiency task force that had already saved millions in labor costs by implementing better receiving procedures. Ironically, similar to what Ray had suggested at that fateful morning meeting. At the annual company leadership conference, Robert shared his experience working undercover. I thought I knew our company because I built it, he told the assembled managers and executives, but I didn't really know it at all. He explained how the metrics and evaluation systems he'd created had been twisted into tools of control rather than improvement, how policies meant to empower employees had been weaponized against them, how his distance from day-to-day operations had blinded him to the reality of store-level culture. The greatest insights don't come from the corner office, he concluded. They come from the people doing the work every day, but only if we create an environment where they feel safe to share those insights. 1 year after his undercover journey began, Retail Giant reported its highest employee satisfaction scores in company history, along with a significant increase in customer satisfaction and profitability. As for Robert, he continued the practice of working incognito in different roles throughout the company for 1 week each quarter, not to catch bad managers, but to ensure he never lost touch with the heart of his business, its people. The beard stayed too, a reminder of the lessons learned during those 2 crucial weeks when the CEO became a stockroom helper and remembered what his company was supposed to be about.